All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Random Banter podcast. This is episode 78, and I have a very wonderful guest on the episode today. First guest of 2025. Would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. My name's Stephen Andrade. I'm an artist and illustrator, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course, Steven. Thank you for coming on. I've got a feeling this is going to be a pretty great episode. So, Steven,
Oh, don't
how did
set
you?
don't set me up like that.
Oh, okay,
You're
okay,
too
okay.
high
Well,
expectations. It's gonna be a crap episode, and you know
oh yeah, I just like jinxed the entire thing.
it.
So, Stephen, how did you discover your fascination and love for illustration and art?
Probably like a lot of kids, it started with comic books. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough, my parents knew somebody who they must have had an older child and they got rid of a whole bunch of comics from like the
Oh, that's
late
nice.
70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And, most of them without covers. So, but it was like stacks of Batman and Spider-Man and every
Oh,
so often like
nice.
another character in there. So that was the first thing.
Hmm.
And then growing up in the 80s, there was always the cartoons and
Of course.
pop culture, absorbing
Yeah.
every Saturday morning, just blasting in your eyeballs, and things like
Yes.
Thundercats and Transformers and He-Man and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and from there, it kind of just went into just growing up really liking that kind of genre stuff, and then noticing the book covers of a lot of the books I liked in that genre. I really appreciated the cover on there, and so from there, it was just practicing drawing and painting and everything, and then deciding like I can actually try to make a career of this and go
Yeah.
forward with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So this isn't a question I put in there, but I just thought of it. Do you have a preference over drawing and or painting or like a different medium that you like to use?
Painting is more fun because for me, by the time I get to the painting stage, all the hard decisions have already been made. The
Right.
drawing part is a lot harder. It's like building the bones and the framework and doing all
Yeah.
that. Usually that takes up more time in the creation of any kind of piece of artwork than the actual
Right.
painting
Yeah.
does. There have been a couple times when I've kind of surprised myself at like how fast the painting goes because I just did enough work
Yeah.
beforehand. And then conversely, I've had some times where I didn't do enough prep work and then I'm agonizing over the painting because I'm like, ah, damn it, I didn't
Yeah.
figure out what colors and what tones,
Right.
and now I
Yeah.
have to go and redo it. But I think the painting, if you do the homework and do all the prep work, the painting is definitely the more enjoyable part.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So whenever you're creating like a new piece, like what's your process with like coming up with the concept or the idea for it? Because I'm looking through some of your stuff. They're like all of them are they have their own kind of uniqueness and colors and they're all very well unique. So what's your process with coming up with a new piece?
It depends on what the assignment is. Sometimes I do stuff where it's just for me, coming up with something. Sometimes it's, I'm getting a job to do a book cover or,
Yeah.
an album cover or something like that, and there can be a lot of notes that way. So there's a lot of different ways to attack it, but basically what I want to do is try to find an interesting way of showing either a scene or an idea or a mood, um, and just trying to find the most interesting way I can think of to convey that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, what'll help is I'll get stuck sometimes on something and I'll go back. I've collected tons of books on reference material from illustrators that I admire. So sometimes I'll go back and look at old movie posters. I'll go back and look at old pulp magazines.
Yes.
And I'll
Yeah.
say like, oh, this is a really interesting color scheme they did, or like I really like how they, this angle is something I hadn't thought of, and I'll steal shamelessly from them and swipe it and put it in my own stuff.
Yeah.
But each process is a little bit different, but basically it starts with just jotting down sketches and tiny little scribbles that most of the
Yeah.
time I can kind of figure out what I was doing with there, and
Yeah.
then just developing it from there.
So staying on that topic a little bit of like what has like influenced you
Mhm.
throughout your time being an artist, are there any like really prominent like illustrators, artists, or like heck types of movie posters, I guess?
I mean, you can't. I think any artist who is working with any kind of movie poster or pop culture these days, well, say Drew Struzan is one of the top influences because there's almost nobody who did movie posters better than he did.
Right, yeah.
Everybody knows his Indiana Jones and his Star Wars and everything. But
Absolutely.
so like in terms of like the 80s and 70s style, like I really like Drew Struzan. I like Bob Peak. He did like the Star Trek the motion picture uh famous poster where it's like the rainbow in the middle, which
Yeah.
shouldn't work. You shouldn't be able to have a rainbow going right down the middle of the painting, but god damn it, it works. And it's like beautiful.
Yeah.
But more of my influence, like I'm influenced by them in terms of like trying to come up with really elegant designs. But then a lot more of my influence comes from pulp illustrators of the 30s and 40s who were working doing detective magazines and horror magazines and things, and just doing really garish, bright colors because they wanted to grab people's attention.
Yeah.
There's an illustrator named H.J. Ward who is probably most famous for doing a line of magazines called Spicy Stories, which is,
Ooh.
spicy being a synonym for sexy, but you couldn't
Oh,
say
of
sexy back then.
course.
So it's like, lots of women with their clothes being ripped off, being menaced by people, and guys with, G-men with pistols bursting through the door to save them and stuff like that. But he had a really great eye for color and composition and just lots of saturated color, which I like to use in my own work.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's other artists too that I love and I don't know if I'd call them influences as much, but just they each have something I appreciate. There's a science fiction artist and fantasy artist in the 60s named Jack Gaughan
Mhm.
who did a lot of book covers. He did the original unauthorized Lord of the Rings paperback covers that were published in the USA
Oh, wow, that's cool.
before Tolkien's estate or Tolkien in England got wind of it and they put out the authorized edition.
Right, yeah.
There's an artist named Richard Powers who did very abstract, surreal stuff, and it's nothing like the artwork that I do, but I really appreciate because it's so different.
Right,
And
yeah.
so yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff I look at, and it may not be apparent that it's an influence, but I try to steal from everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, fair enough. Yeah, so whenever you're creating a piece, like how long on average would you say you spend on a piece till it's to the point where it can be considered completed?
It's hard to say because each one is a little bit different. Like I
Right,
was
yeah,
saying
of course.
earlier with the painting going smoothly. Sometimes things will click really easily and it'll take only a couple days for it start to finish to get completed. Other
Yeah,
times it's like a struggle and a slog getting through it.
yeah.
I'd say on average, depending on, I don't know if I can, I don't know if I can really average it. It's like, it really does depend on the type of painting and what's happening. And also, I like having deadlines because I'm one of those people who could tinker endlessly.
Oh yeah,
And,
no, I get that.
I get to a point where it's like, you hate the sight of it and you're like, I just want to get it
Yes.
out of here. And then,
Yes.
you look at it again 2 weeks later and it's like, I guess it's okay.
Yeah, you're like, why not?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
sometimes it's good to just be able to cut that cord early before you noodle it to death, and
Yeah.
I think that's pretty helpful. But I guess on average, I'd say probably about a week for start to finish painted piece.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. So, with all of your pieces, I mean, you've done tons, tons of them, and it must be almost impossible to pick one that's like your favorite. But are there any that like kind of stand out to you? Any ones that like while you were creating it, you were like, this is awesome. Like you were like, this is my peak. I've reached the point here.
Well, the funny thing is, I usually have that point on every painting, like
That's the right answer.
at about the th at about but only at about like the three-quarter way mark.
Yes.
And then I keep working. I'm like, oh God, it's the worst thing I've ever done. You
There's
know?
that like roller coaster. Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple that came a little bit easier and worked really well, like start to finish.
Hmm.
One of them that I really liked a lot is I did a series of paintings inspired by the Clue movie with Tim Curry,
I saw
and
those. Yeah.
there's one piece that I think really captured it especially well, and it's Tim Curry as the butler and surrounded by the six different weapons from the game, kind of menacing him.
Ooh.
And that was one of the things that, like, start to finish, I didn't really have any issue with, which barely ever happens. But
Yes,
that
yeah.
one I really enjoyed. And then on kind of the other end of the spectrum, I had a piece that I did inspired by the Wizard of Oz books and the visuals inspired by Return to Oz. And it was a little bit of a departure because it was a little bit more of like a pure fantasy rather than the stuff that I'd have been doing, which was a little bit more in like the horror realm or like the pop culture
Yeah,
stuff.
right.
But that one also went really well, and I really enjoyed the colors and the design of it. And those two, I think, are out of the stuff I've done that I can remember off the top of my head that I'm, was pretty happy with all the way through and very satisfied with. But usually,
Yeah.
every other piece, usually I'll look at and be like, oh, I see this one thing I wish I could fix. And
There's like one little nitpicky thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's funny because my wife's an artist too, and sometimes I'll be saying that, and she's like, "You're insane! Like nobody is gonna see that thing." I'm like, "I know, but I just zero right in on it.
And
I'm like,
like you know that
everybody's
it's
gonna
there.
notice
Right,
exactly."
yeah.
So,
So this was a question I put on there that I originally wasn't going to ask because I thought it was kind of stupid, but you know what? What the heck? I'll ask it.
there are no stupid questions.
Yeah, yeah. So whenever you're making like a piece, whenever you're making a painting, are there some kind of colors that you typically gravitate towards? Like any like a type of palette or something like that?
Oh, I would like to say that it's all, each one's different, but as I step back and look, a lot of times I find myself using similar colors. I tend to gravitate towards the saturated colors, and I think that comes from, again, the influence of the pulp magazines that use
Yes.
really high key colors there.
Yes.
I like
Yeah.
to use generally, like to use lots of warms, like oranges and reds, pop up a
Hmm.
lot. I also I love the orange and green color palette. When it comes around Halloween, I'm like so happy because like, yay, orange and
Bringing it
green,
back out.
everything's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. But basically, I use a very limited palette. I have a couple blues, I would like a slightly greener blue, a slightly more purple blue. I have
Yeah.
a more orangey red, and then I have a more of a pinkish red. Just um, kind of basic, a couple earthy tones, and yellow and white, and that's pretty much it.
Mm.
Um, every so often, I'll be seduced by some exotic color of like, ooh, that's great, and then I'll get it and
Ooh.
almost never use it because it'll like, well, when am I going to use this color?
Yeah.
Like I'll try to
Right.
add it in, and I'll be like, this just sticks out like a sore thumb. It doesn't match anything else. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, switching topics a little bit,
hmm
one of the reasons why I decided to reach out to you was because I saw that you did some of the showcase art for the Magic the Gathering new Innistrad Remastered card
yes.
series. For anyone who doesn't know, Magic the Gathering is a card game. Um, so just I'd love to hear about that. Like, what was the process of like creating art for a like a physical card?
hmm well, the funny thing is, like, just in terms of personal history, I was there, as Elrond would say, I was there 3,000 years ago when Magic
Yes.
started. My
Yes.
friends and I in high school, bought the first packs and used to play in
Right,
our
yeah.
friend's basement. And back when it was still just a small outfit before it was bought up by Hasbro and everything.
Of course,
So it
yeah.
was kind of surreal, like, in that sense. So I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'm like, doing artwork on this card game that I used to play.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things is trying to keep in mind that it's going to be reproduced so small
Yes.
that I try to keep the composition as kind of bold as possible so it still reads. But
Yes.
I also want to put enough detail so it doesn't look too simplistic. So technically, there's that, just trying to balance that. But
Yeah.
on the other aspects of the card, the fun thing was the assignment for this was try to make them look like movie posters and
Yeah.
just have some more fun with it, make it more dramatic. So I was able to do things with lighting and just with some angles and viewpoints and stuff,
Yeah.
which I really enjoyed doing. And so far the response has been pretty great.
Oh,
I,
absolutely.
I did one for the Gitrog monster, which is a giant frog creature, and
Yes.
for some reason that one really struck a chord. I don't know if the Magic players just really liked the card a lot, or if
Yeah.
it was the artwork they liked, but or if it's a perfect. synergy of both, but that
Yeah.
really seemed to get a positive response, which was very cool to see.
Yeah, my personal favorite one out of the series that you did was your Through the Breach.
Mm.
I think the colors on that one are fantastic. But I will say, like, even though you said that you were worried about it like being small, and I'd love to be able to attest to that. I was able to pull the Cather's Crusade
Oh,
that you
nice.
did from the pack, and I mean, I gotta say, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Like it definitely it fits as a card and as a movie poster. I remember when I initially pulled it, I was like, "Oh my God, this is so freaking cool."
Well,
Um,
thanks.
but yeah, they are all, I mean, they're all fantastic. I'd love to try and get all of them without spending a bunch of money on card packs.
Oh yeah,
But yeah,
that's one
they're
of the reasons that my friends and I stopped playing. It was like, man, this is addictive. Like
oh yeah. No,
can't do it. It's a bad habit.
it very much is. Yeah, no, I would 100% agree to that.
But
So,
the nice thing is I've done a few other pieces as well for Magic. I got to do they did a Monty Python inspired set that got released last year, and I got to do the Swallow, which is a
oh,
double-sided card. So the front side is the African swallow, and the back side's a
yeah.
European swallow. So that was really fun to do too.
I did see that. I saw that on, I think it was your website that I was just looking through some of your stuff on there. And it didn't click in my mind that that was from Monty Python, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah, when I initially got the assignment, I was a little bummed because I really was crossing my fingers hoping for like, oh, Tim the Enchanter or the Black Knight or something.
Yeah.
And I got the Swallow, and I was like,
Eh.
that's cool. It's not as iconic, but it's still pretty fun to
Hey, it's
do.
still, I
And
mean, it's still cool that it's a double-sided card.
yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I've
So,
done a few more
yeah.
pieces that have not yet been released because the
Ooh,
production takes a while. So, I
okay.
think I
Well,
should have three more cards coming out the end of this year for another expansion pack.
oh, all
Um,
right.
and I just finished another series that I can't say what it is, but it
Of
was a pretty big
course.
series that probably will be released next year.
Of course, right. And obviously you can't talk about it, but are there any showcase cards that you did, like the art showcases?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so. What is a
Okay,
showcase
well,
card? Is that
it's
the
like
one where it's
the
just the artwork?
yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
like the Cathers and the other ones where it's just the artwork on the card.
Oh, I th well, the Gitrog got released as just the artwork.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's a showcase card available. I don't think any others have been as of yet.
Okay. Well, definitely will keep my eye out for those. But yeah, so I mean on the topic of like what's coming soon with your art with again what you can talk about.
hmm
What are some of your like future plans, stuff that you like projects you're working on?
Well, I'm going.
Vagueness you can be vague.
Well, in terms of vagueness, like there is the Magic the Gathering stuff, which is,
Right.
going to be coming later.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm going to be part of a David Lynch tribute show that is
yeah.
opening
Wow.
next month in Outpost 512, which is a gallery in Texas.
That's cool.
They had planned a David Lynch show before he passed away, and then, about a week later, or a couple weeks later after the announcement, David Lynch died, and so it's become a little
Like an
bit
in
more of a,
remembrance.
yeah, it's a little bit more special
That's
now.
awesome. Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
I've got a painting for that that's going to be up in that's in March.
Hmm.
I'm going to be doing some more work with Gallery 1988 in Los Angeles,
Hmm.
which is, where I've gotten a lot of work with them, and they were really helpful in helping me, find a place for my artwork. So it's been really
Right,
great
yeah.
working with them. I've got a DVD, Blu-ray cover for a low-budget indie horror movie called Hunting for the Hag that'll be coming out
Oh,
later this year. That was a fun piece.
that's cool.
Kind of a found footage horror movie with a couple twists and turns in it.
Cool. Yeah.
I got a couple book cover projects I'm working on, and just lots of little stuff here and there.
Nice. Yeah.
I've been basically saying yes to everything, which is great
Hey.
in some aspects, and then other times I'm like, why did I say yes to everything? Like all these due dates are coming at the same
Right,
time. I'm
yeah.
like, oh crap.
Yeah, no,
But
I completely understand that.
but yeah, lots of little stuff that'll be coming out, and just keep plugging along, and hopefully,
Yeah.
find some more fun things to do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So getting down into the little final parts of this episode, we're gonna jump into a little bit of a segment that I like to do on this show called Random Records. pretty
Okay.
much it's where I basically give you the floor to chat about like what kind of music you like to listen to, what kind of stuff you've been listening to recently, because I like to get a scope of like what different people like to listen to broaden the reach of my music knowledge, I guess. But yeah, so Steven, like what kind of music do you typically put on?
Um, a couple different things. I usually like to listen to I like 70s rock a lot. I like 70s
Oh,
progressive rock. My favorite band of all time is Genesis, back when Peter Gabriel was fronting them.
I just
So
got a Genesis record. They're fantastic. Yes.
yeah, so I like to put on like some of the earlier stuff from like the early mid 70s.
Mhm.
There's actually a band that tours that does a tribute show to Genesis called the Musical Box, and they recreate
Ooh.
the stage show from the 70s complete with costumes and
Oh,
lights and
that's
everything.
cool.
So I've seen them a couple times, and it's funny because when it comes to like tribute bands, I used to be like, "Oh, that's so lame," and now I'm like, "No, it's pretty cool
It's cool.
if
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
something you can't see these days."
Right. Yeah.
So I like that, and then I've been getting into a lot of 60s psychedelic pop recently, like bubblegum
Oh,
pop kind of stuff. So
okay.
um, yeah, these really tiny little bands that nobody's ever heard of, and just doing like these kind of cheesy songs. There seem to be like a formula. It's like, okay, you mention a girl's name, and then you mention like a color and flowers, and there you got yourself a pop song there.
Yes.
So that's just kind of fun and bouncy to listen to.
Yeah.
And I like 80s new wave stuff sometimes. It'll depend on the mood. A lot of times when I'm working on a project, I'll alter the music depending on what kind of mood I want to be in.
That's
Like
fair.
for the David Lynch piece that I'm working on now, I've been listening to the Twin Peaks soundtrack kind of
Oh,
on
of
loops because I
course.
need to like get into that mindset.
Yes. Yeah.
And my wife hates it because she's like, "Oh my God, the same same music nonstop." I'm like, "I
Same
know,
stuff.
I'll be done. I'll be done soon, I swear."
Like you just see the
Um,
waterfalls and everything at the beginning. Yeah.
and I also like to listen to movie soundtracks and like classical music that's a little bit more bombastic, like stuff from the late
Right.
1800s, early 1900s, stuff that influenced like John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of my jam.
Fair. Yeah, fair enough. Well, now that we're getting into the little like final bit of this episode, is there anything that you would like to plug? Like your Instagram, your website?
You can check out my Instagram, Andrade Illustration. You can check out my website, which I don't update as often as I should. It's sandradeillustration.com. And there are links there to my shop where I have some prints for sale, and also my shop at TeePublic where I have some designs up there. Right now, and it's only going on for a couple more weeks. I don't know how long does it take for the podcast to get up
I
on.
typically do it every weekend. So
Okay,
it'll
so
probably be we're recording this on a Wednesday, it'll probably be on Saturday or Sunday.
Okay, so for the next probably about a week, I've been working with Gallery 1988 for raising funds for the wildfire relief in LA. So
Yes.
any of my artwork that's bought through Gallery 1988 from now until I believe February 13th, all proceeds are going towards relief efforts. So if
That's
anybody
awesome. Yeah.
wants to get a poster or something and they've been on the fence about it, now's a really good time because it'll
Yeah.
help do some good.
Yeah, and I will obviously link all of those down in the description of this podcast and on the Instagram, everything like that.
Awesome.
But yeah, so real quick before we end,
Mhm.
there's a little thing that I like to do on every episode where I have the guest shout out my friend's dad, Chad Hankins. I don't know why I started it, but I've been doing it for like 70 episodes. So,
What's the name
Steven,
again?
Chad Hankins.
Chad Hankins.
Yeah.
This one goes out to Chad Hankins.
Well, thank
Coming
you
at you
very much.
live.
Well, thank you very much for doing that. And thank you for coming on this episode.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
But yeah, so this has been episode 78. Um, I am your host, Ethan. We had the wonderful Stephen Andrade on the episode. And yeah, do you have anything else to say before we hang up?
No, I think that's about it. I gotta get back to painting.
Very cool. All right. Well, we'll catch you all in the next episode. Bye.